Hello, everyone, and welcome to VGM Vibes 12, my sub-series where I talk about certain themes in video game music. And today we're going to be talking about credits themes. In my opinion, credits themes in games have a huge emotional impact and provide this feeling of a bittersweet closure. Is this going to start a new game plus? Is this game forever gone? Are you going to ever hear this song again? It comes with a lot of, deep connection that you had with the game. And that is something that I'm going to be focusing on because you're seeing all the developers here that put their blood, sweat, and tears into these games, put their hours and their sleep on the line and stuff like that. So there is a very big connection with these parts of the game to the player. The order in which you're going to see these videos are just going to be a release date from newest to oldest. I just felt like doing it this time. No real reason. They're not ranked. And the last couple are going to be sort of breaking that a little bit just so I can talk about my favorite ones. So thanks to everyone who suggested this. This was done through my Patreon with free members as well. So anyone could have joined and participated. That's how they all are. And a big thank you to the guests that you're going to see. I really appreciate your time. Go check them out in their channels below. Without further ado, let us begin with credits themes.
So what are we waiting for? Wires and chains. You make it all shine. You make it all shine. Yeah, one thing that I know. Who cares when you're gone? Find you.
Every day I imagine a future where I can be with you. I will sustain you year after year. I will protect you when dangers appear.
As the title states, spoilers ahead, huge ones, and you might be thinking how there's spoilers for credits. Well, with Yoko Taro as director, anything is possible, so these are indeed spoilers, you've been warned. I would hate to take that away from you because this is a very unique section of the game, and yes, I do mean section. Nier Automata was a amazing experience for me. I discovered the music here in 2021 and kind of knew right away I wanted to eventually probably play the game. And just I always saw these cosplays of 2B and Inez, not knowing who they were. 2B is in everything. Like she's in she's just like a cameo everywhere. Soul Calibur, and I can't even think of what else, but she's everywhere. And when I got into the game, it was I still remember it very vividly. It was just really cool action hack and slash thing where just everything was so different and weird. It kind of gave me the same feeling that I got sort of when I played Metal Gear Solid for the first time, where things were just I hadn't seen before. Even though now I kind of understand like the chip system was sort of like how materia worked and whatever. I just like the whole idea of the game sort of playing you rather than you playing the game. But anyways, disregarding all that, the soundtrack, of course, is probably one of my favorites that I've ever heard. I still listen to it quite daily. And Weight of the World is a very unique song in the game. It's just as important as the rest. It is the credits theme. Also appears in Final Fantasy XIV as a battle theme, which I completely forgot about, but doing research, I stumbled upon that fact. What I really enjoy about this song is the fact that all the singers present are here for this final song: Janique Nicole, Emmy Evans, and Marina Kawano. And they go in and out of hearing the different languages throughout the song: Japanese, English, French, and then of course the Chaos language. So it's really nice. It has like almost like a very live feel to it, like it's being performed. And the whole premise of this is these credits are interactive. It's making a callback to the hacking sections of the game where you're just shooting everything on screen or shooting the developers actually. And The thing that happens is that it's eventually becomes so overwhelming with stuff on screen that there's no possible way for you to finish it. So the game is prompting you, do you want help from others? And eventually you say yes, and then you realize that the people that are helping you to beat this is someone who sacrificed their own save file to help you, which is so bizarre and out of this world to think about, because as soon as that happens, that's when the choir of the song comes in, the children's choir, and it just kind of ascends into this, I mean, pretty much crying state. This song just has pure emotion behind it. And the fact that someone sacrificed their save file to help you through this is the only way I can describe it is just a very Yoko Taro thing. And it's not only one of the best credit songs I've ever heard, but it's one of the best video game songs probably ever made.
What's up, y'all? I'm Neck, or XNeckboneX on Twitch, and I'm really excited because today we get to talk about the ending credits theme to one of my favorite games of all time, The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. It just turned 10 years old back in May, and I remember getting this game on the PS4 for $10 whole, probably a year or two after release, and I was completely blown away by it. The world, the story, the characters, everything was incredible. I spent maybe 250 hours in this game, and I loved every minute of it. I, to this day, look at it as one of the true masterpieces in gaming, and it goes on sale a lot over on Steam and other platforms. So if you haven't got a chance to play it, definitely go check it out. I highly suggest it. This is the game that put CD Projekt Red on the map, and it's because you can feel the level of detail the devs put into every piece of it. This game itself is based on Slavic folklore, and you can feel it a lot in the music throughout. They nailed this sort of medieval rock vibe that just seems to work perfectly with the tone of the game and the world they've built. But once the credits start to roll, you hit this really bombastic string piece that embodies the triumphant feeling you get when you beat the game, like you've overcome an unstoppable force. When the brass comes in, your blood starts flowing, and it's this high that you can only feel through this massive accomplishment you have from going through this huge world. The bagpipes pierce underneath, and it brings you back to an earlier point in the game, just to remind you of how far you've come. And then it all sort of comes to an abrupt halt, as a much more solemn piece starts to play underneath, and you're reminded that the journey's over, and that this masterpiece of a game has kind of come to a close. Something you spent hundreds of hours of playing is over, and it's a really bittersweet feeling. It's awesome because the game was amazing, but it's sort of solemn because it's over. But you can only get that feeling from having come so far and done so much, and I think that there's a lot of beauty in that. As corny as it sounds, life isn't really about the end of your path, it's about the unique journey we all travel to get there, and this game really embodies that. You go through quite an experience, traveling through a gigantic land, helping a lot of people, meeting a lot of characters, fighting a lot of monsters, and when it's all over, it's kind of a heavy feeling. And it's one that I actually haven't been back to in a number of years, which I can't wait to. And if you guys get a chance to play it, I definitely suggest doing it as well.
Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons is a game that a friend recommended to me a little while ago, and I'm really glad I decided to do so because it's a pretty short game. You can beat it in about a day. It's like 5 hours or so. It's extremely linear. It's just a story experience from the creative mind of Joseph Ferris, who you may know from It Takes Two, A Way Out, Split Fiction. And speaking of A Way Out, there is an Easter egg calling back to this game in that, and I won't spoil that for you, but basically it takes the whole idea of taking the whole, co-op, multiple characters on screen thing, but this time it's you are controlling two of the main characters with a single controller. You can kind of think of it as the left side of your controller controlling one of them, and the right side is the other. It's pretty unique and makes for some really interesting puzzling and adventuring, and it's a really cool story. It's a really beautiful story. It features singing that I had to look up called Kolning, a Nordic style of vocals, and that is sung by Emma Sundbring, kind of sprinkled throughout the whole soundtrack. And it's I don't really want to say too much about it. It's just something that I think everyone should experience. It recently got remade. I have not played that one. I didn't think it needed a remake, to be honest. I think if I recall correctly, the remake was only to support possibly co-op. I could be completely wrong about that. But the original still stands up to me. Anywho, the credits for this one is a two-part. There's going to be a couple of these in this video where there's multiple credits in one credit section. The first one being heading home, which is the last scene, going right into the credit section. But the one I wanted to focus on was called Winged Hope. It is extremely solemn. The arpeggiated instrument is just so sad and pretty much paints a picture of the story of the game. And I just think it's really catchy, it's beautiful, it's memorable, and not a lot of people know about this game that I've spoke to. And I'm glad that I was recommended to it because I recommended it to others, including you. If you're watching this, I definitely recommend you check out Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons. And it's something that just stuck with me, and I knew it was going to be in here when I started to do a credits theme. So I'm a big fan of this game, and I await to see more from Joseph Ferris. He seems to have a very ambitious mind of gaming and couch co-op, which I think is kind of like a lost art. So that is Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons.
Looking down on the cars on the highway, the stream of taillights. Why so down tonight? Just another day that didn't go your way. Well, don't you make a side. Just take my hand, don't toss and turn.
The next game we're going to talk about is Skullgirls. You might have heard me talk about this game. It is in my top 10 favorite soundtracks of all time, and I'll get to talk about it. I have a whole bunch of notes here, so let's see where to begin. The credits theme is split with two songs, but there's kind of three. And the first one is called In a Moment's Time, composed by Michiru Yamane, who you might know from Castlevania fame. She is all over the soundtrack. And there is a Japanese version of the song called Hitomi no Kyoku from the exact same singer. I did not know that. I've been hearing them for years. I thought it was two different people, but the fact that the singer is bilingual in both English and Japanese, I was blown away by that. And it has this kind of like jazzy, loungy thing going on. And then the second half of the credits is a song called The Lives We Tried to Reclaim, which is based on the songs The Lives We Left Behind. And I'll talk about more The Lives We Tried to Reclaim in a second, but just know that that's one of my favorite songs in video game history. So if you're unfamiliar with Skullgirls, it is a 2D fighting game that looks similar to how Cuphead looks, hand-drawn, really amazing looking sprites. There's a lot of detail, and you can just see the passion that was put into this game. It's still being played today, and the soundtrack, again, is incredible. It has just just so much to it. There's like this whole cinema aspect to it. It's got some noir, some jazz, just all over the place, and has some of my favorite songs in video games. In the second half of the credits, we have The Lives We Tried to Reclaim, which is a remix version of The Lives We Left Behind. Both of these songs are actually some of my favorite songs in video game history, and the fact that they're kind of related to each other is just a really nice icing on the cake. I've heard these songs thousands of times. I actually did QA for this game. I'm in the credits for this game. And I remember vividly sitting there working on stuff. I remember when I was on it, we had just received the character name Squiggly. And it was just like placeholder animations. Like she wasn't even fully drawn yet. A lot of it was like black and white still. And the way I actually got into the soundtrack was both The Lives We Left Behind and The Lives We Tried to Reclaim, because I would, leave it on during a lunch break, come back, and it was still playing, and it would just be looping, and then eventually it would just kind of catch my attention as to like, this sounds totally different from anything really. There's not a lot of songs, there's not a lot of games that feature a soundtrack like Skullgirls, and this is one of those songs that it plays before the credits as well, but to me is almost a quintessential credits sounding song. It's very short. It's if you hear it once, you'll know exactly the way it ends, the way it builds up. It's perfect for credits. And I can't say enough good things about Skullgirls. I like every single song in the soundtrack. And there's still songs I haven't even heard yet, because when I stopped listening to it, they've had expansions and DLCs. So one day I'll check out the rest of it. But Skullgirls is always going to hold a special place in my heart, and In a Moment's Time and The Lives We Tried to Reclaim are both fantastic scores of music.
This was a triumph. I'm making a note here. Huge success.
Hi, my name's Fendi, and I suffer from a condition known as being a valve meat rider. Just see if that term is banned. Just scratch that part. It's hard to put into words why I love Valve games so much. I think a lot of it comes from the atmosphere of each game that is this like very cold world at the outset, but the more you explore, you find the traces of heartwarming, goofy, and ultimately relatable humanity within, and that these strange places actually aren't so strange after all. The stories of Valve games are so delicately crafted, yet the gameplay and mechanics are so fun and engaging that you can blast through the entire game without paying a lick of attention to the story and still come away feeling like you played one of the best games of your year. And part of that comes from the fact that they do such a good job hiding their lore in ways that show, rather than tell, all the way from the beginning of the game to the end credits. And the Portal series is arguably the greatest example of that philosophy. At the end of Portal 1, you've just narrowly escaped with your life against GLaDOS, the super intelligent AI that's been testing with you, toying with you, and killing your beloved companion cube, and ultimately trying to dispose of you once your existence is deemed no longer beneficial for research purposes. You're surrounded by fire, rubble, and destruction as your limp body is dragged away to God knows where, and while you're processing all of that, your screen cuts to black and you're greeted by a TUI, a text user interface, and then a single voice line to start. This was a triumph. I remember almost laughing the first time that I heard Still Alive because of the sheer whiplash I felt going from this like really sinister final encounter to this super sanitary folksy rock jingle where I felt like I was about to learn workplace safety instructions, but I think that's the point. Still Alive is unambiguously from GLaDOS' point of view, and the main thing she's conveying in her highly auto-tuned message is that A, she's still alive, but B, completely unbothered by what has transpired at the end of the game, saying that she's glad she's not you with her usual snark, and that she still has experiments to run. She doesn't have time to waste on things like the fact that she was just exploded into a bunch of tiny bits. And similarly, Jonathan Coulton, the composer, has created this melody that just builds off a single arpeggio that's so tightly polished and controlled, you can't help but raise an eyebrow whether GLaDOS is actually as unfazed at the events of the game as she's trying to present herself as. Beyond this and other lyrics laden with corporate jargon and technical reporting, the lyrics progressively delve into not only the slightly sinister barbs we've come to expect during the game — she's very upset you threw her into a fire, by the way — but also some universe building, such as connecting Aperture Science with Black Mesa, where Gordon Freeman, the protagonist of the Half-Life series, works and where much of the first game takes place. But ultimately, Still Alive does a great job of bringing the impression of the game full circle. While the forces you're fighting against are seemingly impassive and all-encompassing, your actions may have a greater impact than you'll ever know. Well, it's not entirely true, because if you play Portal 2, you definitely learn more about your impact. Now, instead of you only butting heads with your computational bestie, you have to cooperate with the robotic equivalent of the worst middle manager you've ever had, Wheatley. Your neurotic personality core compatriot and guide for the first part of the game turned into a somehow even worse megalomaniacal robot villain, and possibly the only thing that would motivate GLaDOS into actually cooperating with you to take out the oversized ball bearing. At the end of the second game, the three of you have been through a lot. In Wheatley's case, that includes the cold vacuum of space, but your whole arc with GLaDOS has been fraught with conflict, survival, and a non-insignificant dose of humiliation, including GLaDOS being turned into a potato by Wheatley for half the game, and arguably worse, she had to learn to cooperate with you to take down a common enemy. At this point, GLaDOS, being the intelligent supercomputer that she is, realizes that the best way to get rid of you is just telling you to get out. Relatively speaking, Want You Gone is a much more animated song than its predecessor, despite returning with the same auto-tune and folksy electronics as the first song. Whereas Still Alive feels like a safe corporate jingle, Want You Gone feels much more like a song you would hear in a musical. Still polished, still a carefully crafted drama at play, but GLaDOS shows her hand a little more here. She straight up says, you want your freedom? Take it. And even a little introspective about how she came about to be in the first place. Of course, she hasn't gone entirely soft. My arguably favorite part of either track is when GLaDOS sings Goodbye My Only Friend, and then proceeds to just cook you for thinking she was talking about you. She probably was talking about you. But it's a line straight out of an Avenue Q production, and it honestly still holds up to this day. But beyond the pithy lyrics, lore intertwining, and slightly sinister undertones, both Still Alive and Want You Gone are catchy, they're singable, and they're enduring. People still recognize This Was a Triumph as an equally large reference to the series alongside the classic Cake is a Lie. They also do a great job driving Valve's storytelling values home, that you're going to be entering this world that's a little hostile, a little foreign, but if you scratch at the back panels hard enough, you could probably make it back home still alive with a story to tell. That's it. Okay, goodbye, the end. Later!
And let me play.
The next game I'm going to be talking about is Bayonetta, with a combination of Let's Dance Boys and Fly Me to the Moon, a cover from Brenda Lee. This was a game that I recently did on the VOD channel, which is up here, and that was after I had played Devil May Cry 5, and I had made a lot of comparisons at that time. Like, this feels like the woman version of Dante. And lo and behold, it's the same kind of creative mind, Hideki Kamiya. And I thought that was really cool because you can see the well, Devil May Cry is Capcom, and this is Platinum Games, but you can see the influence of like Capcom because Bayonetta has a dive kick and some other kind of Street Fighter moves. I really enjoyed this game. It's shown its age. I think my only real complaint with this game was the camera. It just drove me nuts, but whatever. The gameplay was really fun. It's very linear, but there is still a lot of replay value. It plays very similar to Devil May Cry, where it's like a ranking system at the end of, well, I was gonna say at the end of each level, but that's not true. It's at the end of each fight. Throughout the level, you'll have like little fight moments, and you'll get ranked on a letter grade, and then at the end you get this kind of ultimate ranking. So it has a really arcadey feel to it. There's a steep learning curve as well. Like, the thing I enjoyed about Bayonetta is that it's kind of caters to casual players and just like hardcore sweats, because the combo system is really deep and can go pretty intense with swapping different weapons. And she has weapons on her heels and the guns, but you can also just kind of mash your way through and not have to know everything, right? It's just made to have fun. You can tell. Really funny storyline, good voice acting. It was a good time. What makes these credits special is something similar to Nier Automata, which is funny because Platinum Games as well. And this is like a 3-part credit section where you are seeing the credits roll for the first time. And admittedly, I thought it was kind of came out of nowhere. It seemed a little abrupt. And you have this orchestral score playing, and all of a sudden it just cuts out, and it's like a comedic, wait, no, it's not over yet. And then it goes into its final cutscene, where the final line of she says is "Let's Dance, Boys," which is a song you've been hearing throughout the game. It's sort of the main theme of the game, and that is playing during the credits, where similar to DMC as well, you have like a fight scene, so it's interactive. You can do combos, and you're also being graded on that as well. But the main highlight to me was, after all the hubbub of the credits, it's now the kind of sentimental side, and a cover of "Fly Me to the Moon" from Brenda Lee starts playing. And I didn't even know this until I started doing research, but I always was under the assumption that Frank Sinatra had the original "Fly Me to the Moon," which is not true. That was the cover as well. But this version from Brenda Lee has since become my favorite. I remember hearing it in the credits and just sort of like really paying attention to it. It almost sounds like the way it should have sounded. I know this is just my opinion, but it just really kind of puts the whole game in perspective. She's doing the whole like choreography in the background, and it's sort of like a nice, enchanting moment. The whole game has been like pedal to the metal, silly jokes, and just a lot of energy, and then all of a sudden, at the very end, it's this kind of sentimental goodbye. And the fact that it's a reference to the game with the moon, and there's a "Fly Me to the Moon" version of the game, it was a really nice, cherry to the cake. And Bayonetta has, it caught my attention, and there's hopes that maybe I'll play the rest of them. I have no idea, but not anytime soon. But it was a nice little break, so to say, from other games, because the only reason I played it was I heard that it was only like 17 hours, and I was like, I could fit that in the background of what I do. So anyways, we're going to hear more about some of these people, some of these composers later on, but that is Bayonetta, "Let's Dance, Boys," and "Fly Me to the Moon." The next game I'm going to be talking about is Okami, and the song is called Reset. I never played this game, so it's going to be kind of brief, but it did make an impact on me. I like to feature songs on here, even if I haven't played them. But if I reacted to them, it's totally valid. And when I heard this, it caught my attention for a lot of reasons. The Japanese instrumentation, the beat, the singer, who is Ayaka Hirahara, really beautiful voice, the aesthetic of it, the main character kind of strolling through the credits was really nice. It was also horizontal, moving sideways as opposed to down to up. Apparently it's an actual illustration style called imakumono. I've never heard of that before, but it's like a horizontal illustrations. And that was pretty much it. The instrumentation and composition of the song was pretty stellar. I really enjoyed just how everything sounded. It still sounds good today. And from the little research I did, it seemed like the song had lost some of its licensing rights, so future ports didn't have it. I think the Wii was one of those. So there's people out there that have loved this game and have never heard these credits, which is so bizarre. There's actually going to be another case of that later, but it's interesting how that works. And this is another one where composers are shared because of Bayonetta earlier. Some of the same composers worked here. This game looks really cool. It looks like something I would maybe find to do like on an afternoon where I'm not doing anything. It just looks interesting, right? You're playing this wolf as a main character, but apparently there's a whole lot of folklore behind it. And right now, the less I know, the better. But it's highly loved by many people. But I thought the song and the whole aesthetic of it just stood out on its own in the world of credits themes, and that's why it's here.
Your words were like a dream, but dreams could never fool me. Time alone, we bide our time. Never will we know if our love is true.
Hello everyone, I'm Vivi and I stream on Twitch as Vivi_TTV. I stream a lot of JRPG and RPG titles, but I've also lately been getting into a lot of retro games from the PS1, PS2 era, one of them being the Xenosaga trilogy. I have them right over here. They are such beautiful, such complex games, and it comes from the mind of Tetsuya Takahashi. I am not great with names or their pronunciation, so I apologize in advance if I butcher anything. But he also created Xenogears and the current ongoing series Xenoblade. This Xenosaga was originally supposed to be 6 episodes, was cut down to 3 episodes. It's okay, we at least have something. But it is an incredibly beautiful and complex story, like I've mentioned. It touches on really complex themes as well, such as religion, what it means to be human, free will versus fate. It touches on a lot of Friedrich Nietzsche's work. A big theme that really spoke to me and that I focused on was the loss of love, the introduction of new love throughout the game, and the hope that it brings along with it, the trauma that we face throughout our lives, and how that shapes us and guides our actions in our relationships, and not just romantic relationships, friendships, and coworker relationships, familial relationships. It's again very complex, very beautiful themes. There have even been times throughout playing all three of the games where character X would act a certain way or do certain things or say certain things, and you're just like, why would you do this? But I've also had to take a step back right after saying that and thinking, okay, but in reality, this would, based on the trauma that character X had faced, this would really be the way that they would react in real life as well. So it really makes you think. It really makes you analyze all of these things in a very realistic way. I loved it. Recommend, highly recommend. But this will also bring us to the end credits song, Kokoro. It's sung by Joanne Hogg. Kokoro meaning heart. Correct me if I'm wrong. And it is just so beautiful. Just to speak to the music and the vocals alone, it is just such a calming piece. And it comes right after a huge battle and an almost sacrifice of one of the main characters. It very beautifully marks the end of the episode and leaves you with a hopeful feeling, signifying that yes, we've been through all this, but now, at least for now, everything is okay, and we can look forward with everything that we've learned and bringing this hope with us. It's so beautiful just listening to it. But then also going into the lyrics of the song, it speaks of love and also how the singer is unable to speak to their actual feelings. And it reminds me of the theme that I had mentioned of how trauma really affects our relationships and guides our actions. And it's just such a good connection between that end song and what we've been noticing throughout the game as well. As much as she may try, she just can't say the words, I love you. They're just so difficult for her to say. And if only she can be stronger and say what she actually feels, it just really, in my mind, made that connection between that song and the game as I experienced it. Thank you for listening. You guys are so wonderful, and I hope to see some kind of conversations on it, and because I would love to see some other opinions on the song. But yeah, thank you. Bye.
I see you reaching out
The Legend of Dragoon makes its return on VGM Vibes. This is If You Still Believe, composed by Dennis Martin and sung by Elsa Raven. This is the main theme of the game, but it is only teased at the beginning FMV, where you just get a little tiny bit of it, and then it fully blossoms in the credit section as one of the most memorable and beautiful songs in the game. This is one of those where it is unlike anything else in the soundtrack. It is very much its own thing, and it's really beautiful. It's one of the catchiest songs I've actually ever heard in my life. So that's something. The Legend of Dragoon was the second RPG that I technically picked up, with Pokemon Yellow being the first. And I remember specifically it was a jam pack. And after some research, it was Jam Pack Summer 2000, a collection of demo discs. And speaking of which, I'll put up my video that I recently did about a very influential jam pack that got me into doing what I'm doing today. But in those same kind of demo disc bundles, I discovered Legend of Dragoon, and they put you right at the kind of juicy part of the beginning of the story. And I just remember it being so different, right? You had these like timed attacks called additions, where you had to time your basic attack with a rhythm, and you get penalized if you miss it. I'm actually playing a game right now that is very similar called Lost Odyssey. And I think there's also a really popular game currently with the same kind of mechanic. The Legend of Dragoon has a very unique soundtrack where anyone who's ever played it will agree that it definitely stands out. There's a lot of oddities, a lot of ballads, beautiful piano stuff, really cool bass heavy stuff. Battle themes are amazing. There's a lot of mood style music, and of course all the overworld stuff. But it is the approach of the execution is kind of different, right? It was split between two people, an American Dennis Martin and Japanese Takeo Muratu, and they both kind of introduced their own style into the soundtracks. I will say, despite the story falling a little flat for me, the game was overall very enjoyable. The way the game looked and the character interactions, the locations, everything was really, really cool. The pacing was a little off, especially towards the last disc. There's just some things that just didn't age well. The voice acting is horrendous. But this is one of those games that everyone who's played it seems to want a remake of it, because it would do probably very well now, you know, with the explosion of RPGs. But it just seemed to have kind of come out at a time where people were, you know, claiming everything was a clone of Final Fantasy, or, you know, the PlayStation 2 was right around the corner. So it just was this kind of unfortunate timing of it. But overall, the game it's pretty good, you know, and I really enjoyed it, and it still holds up today. Just could use a little work on some stuff. But the soundtrack, of course, is something that I've always praised. It's been on this channel multiple times. I love the singing in this song, and it's a perfect goodbye to the game you just played because of the lyrical content and what it's referring to, which I won't spoil. But if you have a chance to play The Legend of Dragoon, I do recommend it. It is just some getting used to, but still a very good game. Bloody Roar 2 Lust in Peace, my favorite soundtrack of all time. If I have a chance to talk about it, of course I will, which is the whole premise behind VGM Vibes, is me finding a way to share songs that I really enjoy with you guys instead of you sending them to me to react to. This is a fighting game from 1998, a 3D fighting game where you turn into beasts. So you can turn into a tiger, a rabbit, a bug, wolf, you know, a bunch of things. And it made for some really interesting fighting styles, because it was really cool having all these like martial arts, and then all of a sudden you're like clawing at them with, you know, with your beast like talons, and all of a sudden you can jump really high because you have these animal like abilities. But the soundtrack is amazing for many reasons. You have the original arcade soundtrack, which is very electronic and full of drum and bass and jungle, and that is the original arcade release, which you can toggle in the options at any time. And then you have the more Japanese rock stuff. That's the console exclusive soundtrack. And the credits for this one, you get 2 credits. You have the regular beat the story, beat the game, and then you get this combo video that the developers left, which is really, really cool. And it shows some really hard to pull off things that you probably haven't even seen in the game or thought were possible. And that's all happening with, you know, the relevant portrait of the character behind them. But then you have the other credits, the special credits, where if you beat the game without any continues, you get a secret boss fight with Shenlong. And if you beat that, then you get the other staff role, which is the same song, but now you have combos that lead into the Beast Tribes, which are like the super moves of the game. So it's really cool that they give you that little bonus. It's a subtle difference, but it's there. And the song, which I didn't even know until a couple years ago, apparently it's called Lust in Peace. I did not know that until I saw it on Spotify. Like, oh, that has a name. But it is an amazing, incredibly nostalgic song for me. I feel like I get teleported to being like 10 years old when I hear this. It has such a great credits sound. I don't know how else to describe that. The riff, the harmony, the guitar part is just so da 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 da. Like, it just sounds really, really good. And for those that don't know, this is Jun Kajiwara on the guitar, who's known for the guitar work in Star Ocean and also King of Fighters. And one of the big reasons I even got into guitar playing was because of Jun Kajiwara. So hearing stuff like this is hearing the beginnings of me getting interested in guitar playing, you know, hearing these melodies and thinking, I can do that and stuff like that. So I really love the song. It has such a nostalgic sound to me. And of course, again, my favorite soundtrack. I'm extremely biased, but when every song is good, it's just bound to show up in VGM vibes. And it's really cool. You know, the more I can talk about it and share it with the world, the better. And it really means a lot. You know, it sounds so simple, but the whole backbone of this channel has been people sharing their love of these songs with me. And this is now me, you know, returning the favor. So anytime I get to include this game, it's always such a special treat, including the very next game coming up. But that is Bloody Roar 2, Lust in Peace, one of my favorite credits themes ever.
Shadow on the face of the moon, broken mirror, a million shades of light, the old echo fades away.
Mario Kart.
Hey, what's up? My name is Miro, and I'm the one that keeps spamming the channel with Mario suggestions. And I guess it worked, because Jesse asked me to do a VGM Vibes segment on Mario 64. Thanks, Jesse! I'm a bit too young to have grown up with the original Super Mario 64, but the remake for Nintendo DS was actually the first game I ever saw or played. And the music in that game is largely the same, except in worse quality, so this soundtrack still holds a big place in my heart. This game's staff roll sequence is quite simple. It shows panoramic views of the different stages, reminding you of the places you visited on your journey. By design, the sequence invokes nostalgia. But for me personally, there's something specific about the song itself that achieves this feeling best. Since Mario 64 is quite an old game, its music was sequenced rather than streamed. So instead of exporting a music file on a computer and adding it into the game, Mario 64 uses a programmed sequence of notes that the software plays back using preset instruments from its sound bank. For example, listen to the guitar sample from one of the earlier levels compared to the one in the credits theme. Or, for a song that's already on the Auditorium channel, how about Dia Dia Dox's Electric Piano? To me, it's not just the levels that you're spending time with, it's the small selection of instruments that you become intimately familiar with throughout the game, all coming together for this final hurrah. You'll find that the sound of Mario 64 is still so iconic today that people will demake modern songs using those retro-sounding instruments. Or in ROM hacks, even though it's completely possible to replace the instruments with more realistic sounding ones, people often opt to keep the original sound and just replace the sequence file. In conclusion, Super Mario 64 and other games of its era didn't just create memorable stages and music, they created memorable sounds. And when Koji Kondo comes along to make a big finale song using as many of those memorable sounds as possible, the result is an emotional credit sequence that still holds up all these years later.
Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter, another one of my favorite soundtracks of all time. You're seeing a pattern here. VGM Vibes is an outlet for me. This is an incredible soundtrack for so many reasons, but I've always wanted to talk about it, and here we are. This song is the epitome to me of what a credit song sounds like. It just screams, "Thank you for playing," and when developers do that, special thanks, and you type of thing. This sounds like that. It's a short loop, but it's so heroic and triumphant that you just feel that you just completed something very worthwhile. And in this game, that is very much the case. Similar to how people send me stuff all the time to react to. Through doing this, I discovered a YouTube channel called Joe Munthal, and he does drum covers of video game songs. And he's done a few for me, but one of the ones I asked him to do was from this game, and it was Omega Red's theme. And he killed it. I'll leave it here, but shout out Joe. He's an incredible drummer, and he's definitely in the pocket all the time. But the reason why is because so many songs in the soundtrack have these beats to them that are just so well done. Everything sounds so good. This is like the golden era of Capcom to me, where they had like the mid-90s on a chokehold with fighting games. They had X-Men, what was it? Something of the Atom, and the Marvel vs. Capcom, Marvel vs. Street Fighter, Capcom vs. SNK, like all these games. And another one we're going to talk about later, Children of the Atom, that's what it was. And man, just that whole art style, the animation is timeless. These games, they still look amazing. They're always going to look amazing. But one thing I really, really, really enjoy about this soundtrack, and even the song itself, is the sound font. And how they just decided to do something different, where a lot of Capcom music, which originally was Yoko Shimomura, if you remember, has been reused a lot. Like even to this day, you know, Ryu, Ken, Guile's theme, etc. They all had the same theme and then just been remixed different throughout the years. This game completely gave everyone new songs, and that's what stood out to me. So Ryu's song is completely different, Ken's theme is totally different, etc. And there's just this constant like horn sound throughout the soundtrack that is just so addictive to me. It to me, when I hear this song and the soundtrack itself, it reminds me of going into like an old movie theater or an arcade or a mall where there's just arcade machines, and this is the kind of sound that you would hear almost blaring through the speakers, and it just has that sound to me of like the mid 90s. And for that, it's just one of the best things ever. It's such a short loop. The composer is a Capcom legend. It's such a good credits theme. I love it. If you wanted to hear more from the soundtrack, I can definitely recommend, first of all of it. But some really big standouts that you might have heard on this channel are Spider-Man's theme, Wolverine's theme, Captain America, Chun-Li, Dalsim, and Shimogorath. So it's just constantly banger after banger, but the credits theme is just something of, you know, not only does it feel thank you for playing, but it also makes me say like thank you for making it. You know, it's like this almost like spiritual bond when I hear these credits. They're beautiful, and I love them. Castlevania Symphony of the Night makes its return to VGM Vibes, but not in the way that you'd expect. This song is kind of an anomaly here. It is a speaking point. It is very polarizing. People hate the song and people love the song. There's no in between. And I did not experience it when I played it. My port, or whatever version I had, which was a collection on Steam, did not include this. It just had some kind of generic song. And this is, of course, sung by Cynthia Harrell, someone you might know for Snake Eater, which is composed by Rika Muranaka as well, of Metal Gear Solid fame, and someone who's relevant later on. But this game has some of the most amazing songs in video games that I've heard, which is the reason why I played it. And there's, of course, Michiru Yamane, who did most of it. But it's just so bizarre, because when I didn't even know about it until when I beat it. The chat was telling me, hey, there's this other version of the credits theme that you haven't heard. And I was like, what? And when I heard it, I just remember being so confused. It sounds... I don't even know how to explain it. It just sounds kind of out of the blue. I would have to imagine that if you grew up with this game, you might have some bias towards it. And while the song is good, it's not a bad song. It's just the whole soundtrack is this, you know, classical gothic church organ, you know, thing that Castlevania is. And then all of a sudden it's I Am the Wind. It's almost sounds like a kind of like Disney song during like a kissing scene or something. I don't know how to explain it. So I don't want to, you know, disregard that the song is actually really beautiful, because it is. But I will admit, it's quite bizarre. And the fact that it's as a credits video, I feel like this one has to go up there in the discussion of credits scenes because it's so different, you know? I can't think of another game at the moment where the credits song is so different from the rest of the soundtrack that, well, I mean, simply just that. It's confusing as to why it, and at first I thought that they removed it from future ports because of the reception it got, but apparently it was just a licensing issue. So who knows if it was still would have stayed there. I'm assuming it would have, but who knows. Great song, great composers, great singer. Don't know if it fits though. That's just my opinion. Let me know what your thoughts. I'm really curious on what your thoughts are, because this is a very, again, polarizing subject. But regardless, it's got saxophone in it, so Really cool. That is Symphony of the Night, one of the best soundtracks I've ever heard. Making its return to VGM Vibes is Twisted Metal. Twisted Metal Black is this game I played when I was a youngin', and man, that game left an impact on me. It is so dark and gruesome. It is still, to this day, one of like the craziest games I've ever played. It's basically like a psychological horror game disguised as a car combat arena game. But you may be thinking, Jesse, this is the Rolling Stones. What is this? This is actually a perfect segue into the next VGM Vibes, which is going to be licensed soundtracks. But anyways, this is the Rolling Stones, of course, Mick Jagger, Keith Richards. And this was my introduction to this song. I never heard Painted Black. I've heard a couple Rolling Stone songs. I'm not a huge fan, like they're okay, but I know their significance to rock and roll and all that, but I've never heard Painted Black. That was a complete, like, whoa, you know, that's, like, that doesn't even sound like it's so dark. But the thing is, it's a perfect credit song for this game. It's a play on the word, it's a play on the title, right? Twisted Metal Black, Painted Black. But the song, as soon as it kicks in with the sitar, which, by the way, first time I ever heard a sitar, you know? So there's that as well. And the song's lyrics really reflect what the game is actually about. You know, loneliness, depression, and just wanting to kind of, you know, remove the color of the world, so to say. And this is one of those games where I would love, I doubt it's ever going to happen, but I would love to actually see it done as a movie. And I'm not someone who watches video game movies. I've never even seen the Sonics. I typically stay away from that kind of media. I think it's just not for me. It seems like cash grabs all the time. Although I heard the Sonic ones are good. That has nothing to do with Sonic. But, you know, typically I avoid all that. Like, I saw the Minecraft trailer and I was like, absolutely not. So, but this as a movie, and Metal Gear Solid would be cool as a movie too. But this would be just, I mean, it already kind of is with the acts and the storylines. But, you know, I'm honestly surprised how many times I've actually included Twisted Metal in VGM Vibes. I didn't think it was going to be in here because it's just a game where you are in cars and you blow up other cars to be last man standing. But, I mean, they cover a lot of vibes, and Twisted Metal Black itself is its own vibe. I've never played a game like that. I don't know if I ever will play a game like that. I had nightmares with this game. It covers really crazy, dark topics. It was the first time in my life where I was like seeing these like demonic things and PTSD and kidnappings and stuff like that. It's pretty intense. But the song, while not being a video game original, there's a lot to be said about licensed songs in games as well that do the job very, very well, which of course I'm going to make a whole episode on, which is after this one, but they just nailed it with this one. This is like the perfect song for this game. It fits so well. It's my introduction to the song and kind of got me into the Rolling Stones a little bit after. But man, it's just the whole vibe, the whole aesthetic of the credits is like this film grain look. It just, everything in this game is just so thought of meticulously. And what else can you expect from the mind of God of War, David Jaffe? So anyways, just a middle black. I'm curious when the next time this game is going to appear on VGM Vibes, but Painted Black from the Rolling Stones. Daybreak from Street Fighter Alpha 3 or Street Fighter 03 is my penultimate favorite credits song. The first time I ever heard it, I don't know, it just kind of like stopped me because of, first of all, it plays in each character's ending, right? So you hear it all the time and it's always pretty much the same result. You fight M. Bison explodes into a million pieces, and this song is kind of like, you know, turning a new leaf, a new day, and I'm pretty sure that's what the title is referring to. But also has a unique scroll, just like some other games on this list, where it's scrolling diagonally to the top right, which I thought was kind of interesting. But this was also in that kind of golden era of Capcom that I was talking about earlier with Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter. And that same animation style that still looks really good. This game looks amazing, whether it's the console port or the PSP Alpha Max. Both still look really, really good, and people still play them to this day. What makes Alpha 3's soundtrack so special to me, which is also in my top 10 soundtracks, is where I've stated before that the percussion is just unlike any other game I've ever heard. I can't explain it, but nothing else in the world sounds like Street Fighter Alpha 3's percussion section. And that includes the keyboards and some of the electric guitar use. There's just a very distinct sound of this game. Even the other alphas, Alpha 2 doesn't sound like this, So it always stuck out to me. And it's one of the biggest things in this song. The beat is just super snappy. Everything sounds amazing to this day. The production is still really, really good. I even went the other day, I couldn't sleep, so I stayed up all night. And in order to try to get myself to go to bed, I went on a walk at like 5 or 6 in the morning where it was daybreak. And I thought to myself, I should listen to this song right now, see if it has any sort of, impact. And I mean, it didn't like change anything, but it definitely, it felt surreal, like just hearing it at the time where it was, so to say, meant to be heard. And it's just one of those songs that I've heard probably thousands of times in my life now. I've used it so many times as background music here. You've probably heard it if you've been on the channel. One more thing I wanted to add, which is just kind of like a late addition. When I was doing research for this entry, I saw a bunch of YouTube comments from different videos of this same song. And one comment stuck out to me, even though it's not necessarily true, it definitely kind of gave me a new perspective on the song. And the comment said basically that this song is a way to kind of signify the end of an era of 2D fighters, which again isn't true. 2D fighters still came out after '98, but not really. It was now going into the 3D thing, and stuff like this was a thing of the past. But when I saw that comment, it kind of made me appreciate this song a little bit more, honestly, and that's a win-win because I get to see it in another light, and honestly, I can kind of see that and hear that. It does sound like the end of an era of the reign that Capcom had, and the arcade was dying out. It was all about consoles now, and this animation style was leaving, and this song sounds like a goodbye to all that. So it's a lot to take in when it's just a little credit song for a little fighting game. But Alpha 3, for those that know, is just full of unbelievable songs, and Daybreak is absolutely the best one out of the whole soundtrack. The best is yet to come from Metal Gear Solid is my favorite credits theme of all time, but also, in case you didn't know, my favorite video game song of all time. This is it. This is the one. I have a lot to say, but I don't want to go on forever. I have a couple of talking points here because I knew I can just ramble on, but basically, just some key points. Metal Gear Solid, my favorite game also, just for so many reasons that I've touched on in the past, but I'll give you some new reasons. It was it had a lot of firsts for me. I was maybe 9. I was between 8 to 10 years old when I played it, something like that. And before then, video games to me were just gaming, very just, I don't know what kind of genre you would call it, but like Tetris-y and just very video gamey. Metal Gear Solid was just changed everything. It was basically a movie, and the first time where so many things happened. For example, the first game to make me kind of question my actions, think about stuff before I do them. It introduced stealth to me. I'm used to just going up to the enemy and just taking them out. Now I have to plan my route around them and all these things, right? It was very cool for me also because there's a codec system, so you can call characters you met. That was new to me. Like, there was a personal connection. I can call them whenever I want, hear different dialogue, and it was just all these things shaping up to this experience. First time that I felt for the antagonist of the game, and I had to think about, do I feel good about what I just did? First time kind of learning about politics and really messed up war situations and prisoners and just a bunch of different things, just a lot of adult things. And I'm like, what, 3rd, 4th grade? So it was a lot. And I've touched upon it in the Spooky Vibes episode and also the Fire themed episode. But the best is yet to come is my favorite song in video games because of everything that it entails. There's a bit of mystique with not understanding the language. I've always been into that, having some kind of mystery so I can look it up. And this is sung in traditional Irish, which is called Gwelga. And it's also composed by Rika Murunaka, who we heard earlier in Castlevania. It's just a sound that I rarely hear. I don't really listen to traditional Irish music every day. And it just really stuck out to me because during these credits, again, feeling like a movie, it wasn't just scenes of the game or characters you met. It's just shots of nature, real life, just Earth. And what I have to assume is shots of Alaska because the game takes place in Alaska. But the combination of the song and these visuals, I just remember it sticking with me so intensely that so much so that in my my 20s, when I was starting to get tattoos and whatnot, and I knew that I had to get something from this game. Something, I don't know what, but something. and I went with this song. I have the lyrics tattooed on me forever. It's more than just the feeling it gives off. It's also the only song to have ever make me cry. So if you ever wanted to see me have the waterworks, I did like a kind of mini reaction to it on the channel a while ago, which I'll share the story of that really quick. That was really, you're gonna notice a pattern here with timing and the name of the song, but that was a really interesting timed thing because when the auditorium started, it was like late September 2021, and early September I just had my new job that I was going to stay at for a while, and then by December I was already backed up doing this, and that's when I decided to leave and pursue this full time, which is wild that I've been doing it this long. But I did a like YouTube live stream, which I'd never even do. I've done like 3 of those ever. And it was just like hanging out for Christmas Day. I don't even know what brought up the conversation, but basically we were talking about how in Metal Gear Solid 4, Snake, who's much older now, goes back to Shadow Moses Island, and all of a sudden this wave of just, oh my gosh, I just saw like my life flash before my eyes. Because in the game, you visit this place that was in the first game. They show scenes from the first game. The song starts immediately. The snow kicks in. You hear the wind. And I couldn't handle it. It broke me. And it made me think at that moment, I'm like, oh my God, this is a song that I've been kind of circling back to my whole life without even knowing it. The song is called The Best Is Yet to Come. I think of this song as sort of a tale of my life because it was sort of foreshadowing this, you know. I knew that I made an impact back then when I was 8, hearing video game music and making an impact, and now I listen to video game music as a career, and having that full circle moment of the best is yet to come, with the best did indeed, you know, arrive at that time. It's a surreal moment for me. So all that combined, instrumentation, the beautiful vocals, the scene in which we see all this, the post-credits call, it's just, to me, the best song ever. Like I don't even know how to put it in words besides everything I just said. You know, I didn't script this at all. I just had like some talking points. But I've always thought to myself, like, what is it going to take for another song to be able to make me cry again? You know, because since then, you know, my walls have gone extremely high up. I've been through a lot. That stuff just doesn't even faze me anymore. There's been times where I've been close, hearing some songs like in Xenoblade and Nier and just a bunch of other things. But so far, nothing has ever been able to really get me like this song. And it's not one that I cry every time I hear it, but it's the only one that can potentially, if I'm in the right mind state, I can probably break and have that moment again. But yeah, I just wanted to share that. I wanted a reason to someday talk about this song, and that's now. I want also to take this time to tell me what your favorite video game song is of all time. Not the credits one. I know this is a credits team video, but I figured there's not going to be many chances where I get to ask you what your favorite video game song is and why. Because at the end of the day, what I just shared with you is why we're all here. You know, we can share these moments. And while Metal Gear Solid is a great game and still stood up really well, I wanted the focus to be the magic of video game music, because I would have never heard this song otherwise if I didn't get into gaming. And that's something to think about, because it's my favorite of all time. So that is The Best Is Yet to Come from Metal Gear Solid, and I hope you share your stories with me. And that is it for credits. So that concludes my list of VGM Vibes 12 of credits themes, some of my favorites and some of your suggestions as well. Let me know your favorites, whether they're credits themes or your favorite video game song. Shout out to everyone that helped, submitted, the guests. Please go follow them and follow their channels. I really appreciate their time. And I've always been a huge fan of credits, as you can see, because they're playing right now. I've always had this thing of all these supporters that have made all this possible. And if it wasn't for, you know, these supporters and you watching and songs like this and credits, then I wouldn't even be here. So there's a lot of vibes to come and all that, but credits, I was always looking forward to doing this one. It's obviously means a lot to me. So thank you all for sharing your memories with me. And again, if you missed it earlier, the next one is going to be licensed soundtracks, not songs, soundtracks in games. And I can't wait to share how that influenced my taste in music as well. So thank you to everyone that you see. Thanks to you for watching. My name is Jesse in the auditorium. Later.